Alrighty, guys, and hello and welcome to the Spiritual Gentleman podcast, where we talk and work about our daily lives for faith, growth, and connection and self-discovery. And today I'm thrilled to introduce an extraordinary guest, Roy Bristow. And Roy has been a spiritual mentor, mindset coach, men's life coach, and intuitive healer from a very early age. Roy has harnessed his natural intuitive gifts, dedicating his life to helping others and unlocking that internal power to connect with their life's purpose. Roy's work blends ancient wisdom, modern coaching, and divine intuition to guide others and strengthen their own intuitive powers in creating positive habits. I'm Roy's been doing this for over 30 years and he's helped countless individuals. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to chat with him, hear your story, and welcome Roy to the podcast.
Well, thanks very much for that. Just simply amazing introduction. I'm literally like hairs on all the full body tingles. So yeah, it's just great. It's great to be acknowledged that way.
This is one thing I love about doing podcasts too, is that sometimes we as ourselves, right, have a hard time. I'm not sure about you, but I have a hard time introducing myself or like pumping myself up. And when I hear someone else do it, I'm like, oh yeah, I do a lot. So tell me, how did
Yeah.
you get, how did you get started with like, tell me about the start of your journey with your intuitive learning about intuition? Because when we think about intuition, we think of it more of as a kind of a feminine trait, even though it's just a trait. So how did you develop and how did that kind of come about for you at such a young age?
Well, you're absolutely right. It sits in our feminine side. So women are naturally more intuitive. However, just as nature often does, it produces opposites. So I've always been naturally gifted. I was just born that way. It's just something that's always been with me that I felt I never needed to question that it was a thing. It was only the external people, family, friends growing up that made me doubt it because I could see things, I knew things, and I couldn't understand why nobody else could. And I found, like through my own observations and working with clients, I found this is actually a very common thing that something so natural to you, you think everyone else, it's natural to everyone else. And then at some point in your life, someone says that one thing that makes the penny drop, and then you go, oh, only I can see the world that way. Right. And that's kind of part of your awakening journey. Then you go, right, well, if I'm the only person that can see this, how do I then start explaining what I can see so that others can understand? And for me, it was about developing intuition. There's, you know, psychics and mediums have been around for such a long time. But again, through my 30 years, I came across people that have been doing it for years, and I was already more naturally evolved beyond them. And they were kind of, not wary is not the right word, they were kind of reluctant to read for me. And I'm like, but you've been doing readings for 30 years. I've been doing readings for like five. And they're going, yeah, but they could feel my abilities better than I could. And it's just fascinating. So I was then able to start coaching and mentoring people very quickly. And because my challenge was really just learn communication and explain something that's unexplainable and not just unexplainable, but then be able to bring it into layman's terms. Because I'm a great believer of like, if you can help people understand themselves, it gets rid of anxiety, it gets rid of depression, it gets rid of stress, it gets rid of so many things. And irregardless of what your purpose is in life, even if you're a plumber, you're going to have a level of intuition that you've got a natural ability for plumbing. It's just that my life purpose is coaching and mentoring and in doing it from an intuitive perspective. So that's my life's purpose, and I've got the tools and gifts necessary for that. Same with someone who's a lifelong firefighter. They might have a natural resilience to heat, but they might not realize that until they talk and experience it from others, and they don't understand why everyone else is wearing a lot more heat-proof gear than they are. And they one day they'll ask that question, and then it'll be like, oh, well, okay, right. And the universe, everybody on the planet has got a particular purpose for their life, and therefore is born with a particular set of skills.
I find that really interesting too,
So
especially when you're talking about the intuition, because as someone with ADHD, right? One of the things about ADHD is that we have a heightened sense in our emotional capacity. So, like most ADHD people, I believe, I don't have any really data, are actually more inclined to be intuitive to more inclined, because like you were saying, right, when we it's that know thyself. When you understand self and understand and love self, you can then bring out your gifts to the world, right? And I love how you're talking too about it, because like I was a chef for many years, about 20 years of my life, and putting stuff in and out of the oven, I can now touch something really hot for a long time without burning myself because you built up that reaction. And I love also what you said
Yeah,
about like kind of the example of the plumber too, of recognizing that as we practice and develop these things, that natural, it's that not using it's not necessarily our mind, but it's that kind of full body of like we're in our like I find purpose, or that gut comes from down here, not up here. So it's when we're living through that we can really, and after 20 years of being a plumber, right, you're instinctively going to know because you have all that knowledge and wisdom of like, all right, when I see that, I know how to do that. Of like, you can present to me five different ingredients that I could be like, okay, we can do this and this with it because of that knowledge and like, and that intuitiveness of being with the environment. So, my next question to you is, was there a particular moment in your childhood that brought out these gifts, or a significant kind of moment that you're like, okay, this is like, because I recognize that too, that feeling of, especially with the ADHD kind of thing, of like feeling outside. I get that idea of seeing the
yeah.
patterns and everything.
I've
Yeah.
always felt an outsider. Yeah, I've always
So,
felt an outsider. I've not done the ADHD journey myself, but I would say that I think that's more because of the generation I was born in, where ADHD wasn't a thing. And I'm going to be controversial here, but there are stats to back this up to a certain degree. A majority of ADHD is diet based, and the stats to back that up. So, because a lot of kids are raised on too much sugar, and so it overloads the system, and the system gets hypersensitive. And there are stats. In fact, you can go looking for them if you really want to challenge that. But we're not here for that. But I'm just saying, like, it was, and that wasn't really that when I was growing up. I was raised in England, and our diet was a lot more healthy. The irony is, like, when because the trend at the moment is organic food. Well, to me, growing up, that was just food. Everything was organic, so they didn't need to use the word organic. So, I was raised on the classic British meat and two veg diet, but it meant I ate a lot of vegetables and a lot of fruit and not a lot of sugar. But I
and
had the natural
and
sugar, so
unprocessed foods, you right, that's the biggest thing
yeah,
that I find
yeah, yeah,
of
yeah,
like in my journey with ADHD, and also just as a chef too. I think the biggest thing that holds us back on our health is the highly processed foods, right? Is anything that's highly processed
mm,
is going to cause, you saw in the 1990s, after kind of, especially in the United States, of the of childhood obesity, increase of ADHD, increase of childhood cancers, obesity, diabetes, so many of these health things that then affect the rest of your life by base of what you consume. And
yeah,
I think a
yeah,
consumption of not
and I
just
think
food too, just the what you
yeah,
consume
yeah,
of
yeah,
everything.
and there is definitely a stat for this, but sugar is more addictive than cocaine.
Yeah.
It's one of the most addictive substances on the planet. Diet has a massive influence on our intuition as well because it affects your mood. So the more clarity of mind and heart you have, the more clear your intuition is. So put simply, the more healthy your body is, the stronger your intuition.
Yeah.
Because part of my purpose, how I explained about I like, well, I'm naturally, I found many years later, I was naturally able to grab a spiritual concept and translate it into basic English. So pretty much everybody could understand it. And that helped a lot of people, like, because when you say to someone, oh, you're clairvoyant, people kind of go, what does that mean? I see the future. But I'm able to tune into their gift and go, no, what actually it means for you is, and then completely dissect clairvoyance into how their gift works, because you can get 10 clairvoyants and their gift will work in 10 different ways. So the clairvoyance is just an umbrella term for having an ability to clearly see what others can't, that aren't clairvoyant.
Which is what
And so
clairvoyant
I'd say,
means, right? If you think about the word
yeah,
clairvoyant, right?
clear
It is,
seeing. I mean, yeah, it means
yeah,
clear
yeah.
seeing. So people, not all clairvoyants can see the future because their gift might be that their clairvoyance means they can see auras. and
or
they
see
have
anything
nothing to
for the
do with
truth, right?
future
It's
foretelling.
seeing
Yeah,
it's seeing
yeah,
truth. It's seeing
yeah,
reality as it is, of whatever
yeah,
that may, and that can take
yeah,
in so many different forms, right? It's
yeah,
funny because
and
it's us humans that limit the thinking on it. It's not.
yeah, 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 yeah. And the thing is, like the psychic and spiritual industry is still so misunderstood. I mean, partly because of films and myth and legend and all that lot. You tell people you're a psychic and they automatically think you can tell their futures and predict everything. And oh, well, why haven't you won the lottery yet? And that, and it's like, well, it doesn't quite work that way because you've got free will, you got karma, you got all these influencing energies, and also your life purpose plays a part. So your gift is a tool for your purpose, for your life's mission. So if you're not meant to see the future, your gift isn't going to. The universe is very efficient, because the universe is basically electrical energy, and electrical energy takes the path of least resistance. Because the great irony was, before really opening up to my energetic healing abilities, I was an electrician for 20 odd years. So the universe taught me how to understand physical world energy before it then steps me up a notch or 10. So I knew that electricity and energy takes path of least resistance, which means our life always takes the path of least resistance. So when you're trying to do something and there's resistance, that's not your path. And it's kind of that simple. Like when life gets hard, that's just the energy of your life telling you you're not quite aligned with your life path.
So I have a question on that particular thing of like when you
Yep.
kind of have a struggle, when is it the like a lesson that you're trying to overcome towards your purpose, or when is it like that road sign saying you're going down the wrong path? Like, is there a way to kind of differentiate between that, or is that more of our own narrative that we tell ourselves, like within that kind of within our story?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good question. Everybody's got faith pretty much. Even the hardcore atheists will have some form of intuition and gut instinct that they will rely on
They have faith
in
in science,
times of
right?
being
Like
stuck.
like atheists have
Yeah,
faith in science, which is still faith, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
is
So,
when we talk
so
about these
science,
principles, like it's that like people think it's this like grander than it is, but it's a simple thing. Faith is faith, and you can apply faith in so many different ways. I'm
yeah,
sorry,
I say, yeah, no, that's right. I'd just say science is proof what psychics and spiritual and oracles have been saying for 100 years, and they're just finally caught up and proved it in the physical realm. That's what science basically is. It's looking at the same coin just from a different angle. And it's like, what people consider signs from the universe, science calls reticular activation. It's the same thing, just using different words. So, if you're a complete atheist but believe in science, then use science to guide you. Doesn't matter who's guiding you, but you're accessing a higher power to give you meaning and guidance for your journey. So when that question you asked about when you're feeling resistance in life, that's the universe saying, right, we need you to ask questions. So stop what you're doing, pause, and ask the question, am I on the right road here? And then wait a couple of weeks, because a couple of weeks in the grand scheme of things is nothing, and see what is repeatedly to you. Either the same door will keep coming or a new door will come. And that's because in any given moment in your life, you only ever end up in a T junction. You're either still on the right track or you're going off the track. That's it. We're in a universe of duality. We're in a binary universe where there's only ever two choices, right or wrong. Or even right or wrong is actually the wrong terminology to use. You're either staying on the path or taking a route that's going to teach you the hard way.
Yeah, it's basically choices and consequences, right? Like you're always going to be faced
Yeah,
with it with choices. There could be multiple choices, and it's how you choose to that path. And ultimately all human paths end the same with
yeah,
6 feet under, right? Like so like
yeah,
within this physical body, like we all know where the end is, so it's how we take along that journey. I wanted to get into a bit more of how you use your intuitive gifts on a daily basis. How do you handle it for anyone kind of watching or hearing this? So before we got on here, we had a little technical difficulties with trying to with the sound and everything else. So how can we apply intuition and these spiritual principles we've been talking about to our daily lives to handling like the the everyday minutia of when we come across challenges, opportunities, things that come up in our lives. How can we use this to our advantage or to help us succeed in life?
Yeah, well, trust and faith, because we're raised in an environment to use our logic, and our logic is the wrong tool for the job. Our logic is there to say, it is to teach us two things. That doesn't make sense, and that is dangerous and it can kill you. Not fear. Fear is an illusionary energy, but danger is real. Like anybody that's been in a truly dangerous situation will have first-hand experience of the difference between fear and danger, because your body reacts very, very differently. Fear is here and sits in your head and it's all thoughts and worries, whereas danger, your whole body just literally lights up, starts pumping adrenaline because it goes into it goes into primal fight or flight mode. So that's danger. So logic is basically, it's like if you stood at a really busy intersection and you're being a bit impatient and you want to cross, your body will go, if you go across that road, you're going to die. That's logic, because logic is part of ego, which is there to keep you safe. Problem is, when we give logic too much power, too much of our energy, it starts making shit up. What we really should do is go, right, the logic is saying there's something not right here. There's something in this environment right now doesn't make sense. Then should pass it up to intuition. For intuition to sort of tune into why something in that environment doesn't make sense. And it could be that, like, this is an extreme example, but when you're really tuned in, you can have these occurrences quite often. So, we'll use the stood at a crossroads analogy, big intersection of highways, and you're going, right, and it's somewhere where you walk every day. You cross that road every day because you walk to work. And then in this one particular day, you stood where you normally stand and something doesn't feel right. And that's your logic going, something doesn't make sense here, because it knows the environment, it knows the crossroads, it knows where you always stand. So it knows the logic of it. And then in that particular moment, there's something not logical. So if you take a few seconds to tune in and go, right, what's not, because I come here every day, so why does it feel different today? And then something inside you tells you to take a few steps back. Or the universe might intervene and you'll just see something out of the corner of your eye that fascinates the hell out of you, like a butterfly or something like that you haven't seen ever. And you go and look at it, and then all of a sudden this car careers off. And if you hadn't tuned in, you would have got cleaned up. So intuition, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a more harsh occurrence of how intuition can save you, but you can use it for everything, because intuition knows. The difference is the human mind tries to work it out, and how it works it out is what we've been taught, what we've heard, what we've drawn experience on growing up from others. So it actually makes a gigantic assumption, and therefore is never ever any of the truth. Because you step into, there was a guy called Sir William of Ockham back in 1800s or there and thereabouts from England, who came up with the theory Occam's razor, which in its most simplest form is, if you have to surmise about a problem and bring in outside things to try and make it fit, you're further away from the actual truth. And everyone's heard the most common phrase of it. The most obvious answer is usually the right one. So take a piece of paper at your feet. Again, you stood at the same place at the crossroads, and one particular day it seems to be a bit of paper at your feet with 4 numbers on it. And you notice this bit of paper. Logic will go, oh, it's just blowing out down the wind. But if you start to work out, well, where's the nearest paper shop? And do all those, the statistical odds of that bit of paper being right at your feet are so astronomical. The most obvious answer is it was meant to be there for you to read. And that's what intuition tells you. Intuition would say, see that bit of paper down there, read it, it's important. Yeah, you might have to do a bit of research afterwards to find out what the numbers mean, but that's how intuition works at one, also with the outside physical realm working at one with intuition. And it will do that with everything. So one day you might, for some reason, decide to wear a certain t-shirt. If you use your intuition to choose your clothes each day, you might end up in a place of colour therapy, and that it keeps you happy all day because you chose to wear yellow or something bright and bubbly. Or you might have a t-shirt that has a certain message on it that someone needs to read that saves their life because it's a positive saying t-shirt. But you won't see that, because the thing you work with intuition, 95% of the time, you don't really see what happens after you've followed it, which is why faith and trust are key components to using intuition. we're down here for the experience, not the choice. That's the misconception. We think we've got free will. We've got very limited free will down here. We had it before we came down. So we're here to experience, like that scene from The Matrix where the Oracle is giving him the boiled sweet and he's going, you already know what I'm going to do, don't you? You already know whether I'm going to accept this boiled sweet or not. And she went, that wouldn't be a very good oracle if I didn't. And she said, you're not here to make the choice. You're here to understand why you made the choice. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to understand why we made the choices. And because we're down here for a human experience, and you can't have the experience if you're always worrying about the choices.
Because you're not living the
But the human
experience, right?
brain,
Like, because it's that idea
yeah,
of being stuck in your head and not being in the moment or
yeah,
experiencing it, right? Like, I find this particularly when we're, especially because intuition is such a hard thing to put into words to describe that kind of feeling or how like it applies to life. Like for me, like I loved your examples too, because there's actually something when I was a kid, it was about maybe 12, 11 years old. I used to get bullied a lot. I went to a private school and there was a public school on my way home. And there was one day where these two bullies at this corner would always bully me. And one day, one guy wasn't there. So like the hair stick up on the back of your neck and you're like, okay, something's off. And of course, so I go racing across the thing. He had a 2x4 knock me off. Whole kind of trauma and thing that happened there. But it was once again that intuition kicking in for that second, not realizing what it was kind of. I knew that there was danger, right? And I loved how you talk about
yeah,
fear and danger there. Because one of the things in my in recovery, I heard about the word fear. Fear means fuck everything and run, or face everything and
yeah.
recover, or false
False
evidence.
emotions appearing real.
Yeah, that's the other one I've heard as well.
Mm,
And it's recognizing of like how the fear, to quote the Dune movies, fear is the mind killer, right? Like as soon as fear
mm.
gets in there. So what I'm kind of curious is like, 'cause I know you guide towards people of undiscovering their life purpose and understanding the tuition. So for someone who's new or watching this and wants to like learn how to like take baby steps into understanding or learning to work with their intuition, what are some like daily practices or little practices they can do to start? Is there like a journaling, a meditation practice that you do or would recommend?
Yeah, well, the first thing I recommend, because this is a universal life lesson that every person gets, whether you're on a spiritual journey or not, patience. Give yourself time. Like I've been developing my gift for since being consciously aware of it for 45 years, and I still know nothing in the grand scheme of things. Like my intuition can work differently one day compared to the next, and then I feel like I'm at day one again, going, "Well, how the freaking hell does it work then?" Because I thought I'd got some kind of pattern here, and then it changes like that because we evolve. Like imagine yourself to be a mobile phone, and every time it upgrades, it changes the menu, and you got to figure out the menu again, and just you got to figure it out. Because you've figured it out, it upgrades again and changes the menu again. That's intuition. That's how it operates, pretty much.
And isn't
So
that
you're
almost how
never,
like life operates too? Of like how we as people are constantly, because every day we're not the same person. Even the moments of who I was an hour before this is not the same person who I am now. So it's that kind of journey along, right? Just trying to make sure I'm
yeah, yeah,
following.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's that analogy that you can never stand in the same river twice. Because once you stand in the river, that because it's flowing, you're never in the same river, and your life flows forward. So you're never the same person you were. Like we are completely different people compared to when we started this podcast, because we're both learning stuff and having an interaction with somebody we've never met before that's adding new experiences. And there's no such thing as a coincidence. So there's a reason we've met. We just don't know what that is yet. And it could be something simplistic as just I need to get a message out to people on your podcast, or that you just needed information of what I'm going to say tonight, or it could be a lot more in depth than that. We won't know until a lot of people get aha moments or whatever. So, going back to what you're asking, be open. Rule number one, be open to new experiences and the world becoming, compared to what you were when you first started this, unusual. Because the intuitive world is not what you were raised in. Yeah, but there are some, obviously there's going to be some people out there that were raised to be at one with their intuition. Like my son was raised that way because whether it's for his purpose or not, I made sure that he's at least got access to that tool because Intuition compared to logic. Logic is like a, let me get there, is like, if you spat on the ground, that's your logic. Like the amount of water, that's your logic. Intuition is every ocean on the planet and in the universe. That's the difference between logic and intuition, yet people insist on using logic, which just has no capability to figure anything out. Whereas intuition just knows because it taps into all that there is, where all the answers are, and just downloads it.
Because
It takes practice to get to that
it's
point.
omni. What's the word? Omnipresent or
Yeah,
omnipotent?
omnipresent. Yeah. Yeah,
Omnipotent.
again, going back to little tips and tricks, because of going off at a tangent, but that's also the spiritual world. You have a plan for the day and it'll go off on a tangent and it'll go where it's meant to go rather than where you want it to go. But a daily routine, because it's called a spiritual practice for a reason, because you have to practice it every day and start simple. So, depending on, go with what you're drawn to. So, again, this 2 week patience. Right, I want to start a spiritual practice. Where do I start? Hey, universe, God, Buddha, Allah, science, whoever your denomination is, it doesn't matter. I'd like some guidance on where to start. Because you've got this great energy that's there willing to help you, and all you have to do is ask. So learn how, get comfortable with asking. Like, hey, like, I mean, I go the route. I've got a spirit team and spirit guides and angel guides and the universe and all that. That's my route, and that's who I speak to. And I go, right, I'm feeling a bit lost today. What am I supposed to be doing? Give us a clear sign. And it's that simple. It's just that simple of asking, but then waiting for an answer. And it will get put right in front of you and it will be obvious. In the beginning, it might seem a bit obscure, but it'll keep showing it to that much where you've seen it 4 or 5 times and you're like, okay. So let's say someone takes this advice and goes, right, okay, I'm going to start a spiritual journey. Where do I start? What do I start with? I'm not sure. And then over a 2 week period, they just see maybe 10 pictures on TV or T-shirts, or even in reality, depending on where they live in the world, they see 10 bears. So then it's like, okay, well, I've seen 10 bears. Prior to that, I never saw one bear. So there's the guidance to what do bears mean? And it could mean a few different things, but it's your journey. So it's what bears mean to you.
So to be open and to look for kind of those intuitive signs or those things that pop up in your life over and over again, recognizing that, like, I like to think of, like, I don't know if you've ever experienced, if you experience deja vu, but for me, like, I'll have moments throughout my life. So when I was 15, I had a spiritual experience. Long story short, I was thrown in the woods. I'm from Washington State, America. And they threw me this Native American ceremony where they basically popped me in the woods and I had to make a fire and keep it going all night. In the process, I saw
Yeah, vision
Kitch.
quest.
Yeah, it was basically a vision quest. Because in the Boy Scouts and the Order of the Arrow, the Honor Society, they take a lot of Native American ceremony. And I had always played the character of Kitch the Guide. So a lot of people think I'm crazy when I say this, but during that night, I saw the ethereal image of what I believed of the essence of Kitchkinnit the guide come sit to me in my fire and tell me my life story. And then I'd have these moments of deja vu that would come back to there. And that told me that when I have those kind of deja vu moments, that aha, like, oh shit, I feel like I experienced this before, or it was in a dream. I'm like, okay, I know I'm on the right path. This was my
Yeah.
use of sign markers. So to kind of get back to like basic things, so start with like, so like a good, I guess, way to practice intuition is to be open, looking for signs, and maybe writing down your ask of what you want to ask or the prayer maybe every day so you
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
aware to it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like a key component at the beginning is repetition. So when you ask the question, like, don't accept the first thing you hear, see, or believe. Wait till it gets like, because intuition is kind of like your mum when she wants you to clean your room. Do it. Clean your room, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room. That's intuition. That's what spirit do. They nag at you until you get it, and they get repetitive. And the thing is, you know how I said like the universe takes the path of least resistance. So they'll give you the most efficient answer from the off. So sometimes you ask more clarity, all they'll do is show the same message but stronger. If that's the most efficient answer, whether it's a bear on a t-shirt or a repetitive song in your head, or you keep tripping up, you know. So let's say like, okay, well, what's my purpose? And then all of a sudden you don't fall, but you keep tripping over things. And then at one point you say to yourself, that's the fourth time this week I've tripped on things. What the hell's going on? That's a sign. And that's the universe going, in the near future, there's a trip coming that you're going to need to take for your life's purpose because you're tripping. Now, it could be that you need to do like Native American ceremony with plant medicine, and the tripping means tripping that way. Doesn't necessarily mean a flight overseas or a trip in your
Physical trip.
local area,
Yeah, yeah.
like
It could
a
be it could
travel
be
trip.
yeah, it could be a
Yeah,
mental or
yeah.
spiritual
So
trip
yeah,
or
yeah,
it
yeah.
could
So and yeah, so that's the kind of thing you have to work out because the universe, although it's very efficient, speaks vaguely.
well
It speaks in omen and signs, and because the thing is, like, it uses visuals. How can you explain something? Because we'd have to have the experience. If they told you what was coming, you wouldn't have the same experience. So they have to sort of lead you to the door so you walk through it. Yeah, this is the door. So when you say, well, what am I supposed to be doing? They present the door.
and it's
And
your
that door
choice.
won't
Yeah.
move until you walk through it.
Yeah, no, I
So
find
to
that
give you an
really interesting.
example,
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah,
to
sorry.
give you a clear example, like I'd organised a 10-day holiday for my birthday this year. And leading up to, and this was in Bali in Indonesia, and probably a month out, I just started getting a sense, and I was literally saying it to my partner and my son, going, I don't think I'm coming back from Bali. And I kept saying it. And that's all I got. And I didn't really look into it because I just thought, okay, well, probably an opportunity coming. Because I knew what I'd been asking the universe for. So I thought, oh, I've got a really good opportunities coming for my career, or so I might get invited to go and speak somewhere. And yeah, I'm open to that. So I went on holiday open to an opportunity dropping in my path. What actually transpired was there was a challenge with my visa getting back to Australia, so I couldn't get back to Australia for 3 months. I ended up flying back from Malaysia, not Bali. So it was absolutely 100% true. I just didn't do the due diligence to find out bloody why. Because I thought it was this, and it turned out to be this. With a bit of due diligence, I probably would have figured it out. But the great irony is, if I was meant to figure it out, I would have got further signs to figure it out. But because I didn't get those, I was meant to experience that because I was away for 3 months in the end. Well, 110 days turned into 104 days by the time I got back home. And so I was meant to be away for whatever reason and travel all the other places I ended up traveling for a reason that was unbeknown to me. And that's just one of those universal things going, we've got a journey for you that you need to do that you probably wouldn't take on your own accord. So we're going to make you do it.
Oh, yeah, the universe does that a lot. Yeah, it's kind of funny too, because it's like like you said too, right? Like the universe will just put the tools at the feet, will present it to you. Because I kind of think of the universe as almost, or like that intuition, it's not words or pictures, but almost that kind of emotional feeling that you get. And so it's hard to kind of like and the way to interpret it. And do you think we as humans focus too much on the why or the how and not
Yeah.
just allow the experience of like even that of like, why do I gotta be this? Why does that have to happen? Why do I need to know? Right? Like that's like sometimes of
Yeah.
like some things like understanding
So,
for ADHD on how your brain and how you operate. And I don't even think it's just for ADHD. I think it's just for humans in general of understanding how you
yeah.
operate as a person and the ability to, I think, tell me if you agree or disagree with this or your thoughts. Like one of, I think, the biggest struggle, especially with men, because I know you work a lot with mostly men as I do, the ability to love ourselves, right? Like the human condition to learn how to love and support and nurture themselves. I find this is one of the biggest struggles with men in particular. But do you find that with your clients of like, what do you think is the biggest struggle that your clients face and how have you helped them to overcome it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I mean, that one you described is one of the key components, and it's all born out of the mother wound because we're born, and the first thing we want to do is please our mum, and because we don't really connect with our dad until we're about 2 or 3, and that's just men, just how we are, because our role isn't to help the baby grow in the first few months. That's the mum that, and I'm talking
Biologically,
um,
this is it's a
very basic
yeah, basic
biological
biological.
stuff
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
biological stuff. So it's not until we can really start to communicate with the child that we don't really get involved from a father perspective. So the thing is, because we're so sensitive, like our intuition is really firing until we get to about 7 when it starts to, because then we start going into a bit more mainstream of schools and fitting in with friends and stuff like that. So we start to shut it down depending on our journey. I didn't. I was always quite open, but again, it depends. We've all got our individual journeys. And so those formative years are really, really important because they build our neural pathways. If our neural pathways are allowed to be open to the intuition, which is our pineal gland, we are very powerful people. Humans can create some amazing things when they're very powerfully connected to intuition. And without going into all the conspiracy theory, governments fear powerful people. So they'll do anything to shut, fluoride is what shuts down the pineal gland. Again, there's enough research out there to prove that. This not really, well, these days it's just shown that the difference between conspiracy theories and the truth is about 3 to 6 months. So,
The perception of truth, right? Like this is one of the things I loved the idea because I play with this. One of the concepts in my coaching for people to change is the how method: honesty, openness, willingness, right? Like, so these three concepts, but like the ability to be honest in truth, right? Your perception of truth, and it's recognizing evidence on the ground of what is real and what is our perception of truth, right? Because how you view
mm,
something and how I view something, because it's almost like to think of it, maybe this is like we're like these spheres of like our own energy floating around, and we're all kind of contacting and flying around, but we're all in one big thing together. I don't know, I'm having a hard time explaining it, but I think
yeah,
you
yeah,
kind of get the
we're all,
visual. Yeah,
yeah, we are all connected.
all
Yeah, we are all
connected.
connected because the whole universe, the whole planet is energetical and we're energetical, and every energetical thing is connected to another energetical thing. So we're all connected that way, yeah. But going back to what we was talking about in regards to, wanting to please our mother, the challenge is because those early years we learn monkey see, monkey do. If our parents don't love themselves, that's what we learn. But the thing is, like, even kids being born today, you're only going back 3 generations where, bear in mind, in those 3 generations, there's been no great leaps in regards to healing emotions in mainstream because it's still here's a pill
Or
and
with
that
or within the
and
even that
masking
family
symptoms.
line, or within even in that family line
Yeah.
of like
So,
those
but
generational traumas.
you go back 3 generations, you're in wartime. So the main focus was there, and we haven't. And you think about wartime, and I'm talking Second World War wartime, where something like 25 million men were killed. That's still in our psyche. So no wonder we don't love ourselves because it takes a lot of inner work. So intuition is when you really split it, it's inner tuition. And the first part of that journey is to start loving, is the spiritual journey is actually a journey of loving yourself for who you are. But the minute you're born, you're carrying the weight of a family that were persecuted, forced into war, and all those things, which are all this modern, like with my own knowledge now, are all signs of having lack of boundaries and giving your power away to people in power that shouldn't have the power that we're still battling with today. COVID proved that and really highlighted that how not to just give our power away to bullshit and to people in power just because they say, oh, we know because they're on the telly. Even though prior to that, we'd curse them day in, day out for lying all the time. We never trusted a politician, but then all of a sudden decided to trust them for 2 years. I mean, the human mind is just stupid. And it was only the awake ones that didn't fall into that even deeper. It's like I didn't wear a mask in my whole fucking life. It's like because it's that things without question. When you're awake, you just start to question a lot of things. So, for instance, why masks were ineffective is because the biggest virus known to man is 125 nanometers, and the gap in a mask is 5,000 macrometers, and a macrometer is 1,000 times bigger than a nanometer. So it's that. I think there was a few memes out there going, it's like trying to stop a mosquito with chicken wire. It's just not going to do it because of simple physical size of things and holes. So it was ineffective, yet they were pushing it, saying it would stop things. Whereas critical thinking and even a basic modicum of research, you'd find that out for yourself. But
It's funny because it
then it
reminds me
also
a lot
ties
of an
in.
old George Carlin quote. Like I don't know if you're familiar with the comedian George Carlin. If you haven't, definitely check him out. So in the he this is the 1980s. He said like the individual smart, intelligent in being. But when you put three or four human beings together, the group think takes over, and like we become dumb as shit like things. Look up some George Carlin clips on particularly when he talks about like how kind of power is distributed. He's mostly talking about the kind of the US, but this is just the general idea of like
Yeah.
there's a conspiracy of power because like they all go to the same university, they all have the same interests. Like there is a definitely check him out. He's
Well,
really interesting.
it's kind of like the government. It's kind of like modern monarchy. Monarchy passed power on to their children just because of what their name was and the family that they're born into. It's just the same, but done a different way. And we all went to the same college. It's the same thing. But the thing is, and what history has shown, and I know this is slightly off track, so I'll keep it very brief. History has shown that empires fall frequently. You don't have to look through recent history. The Roman Empire's fallen, the Mongolian Empire's fallen, the Byzantine Empire's fallen, the British Empire's fallen. This empires fall all the time. So those that think they're in power forever are just kidding themselves. But human nature, the thing is, like, it's almost like human nature has its own failsafe. Because at some point, people with too much power get arrogant and trip themselves up. When you go into the deep spiritual behind that, we're in a universe of duality, but it's not a 50-50 split because that would create, what's the right word? That would create no movement.
So it's got to be
So
60-40 or something. So you have
yeah, it's actually 51. It's actually a 51-49 split in this particular universe, which means the good always wins out. So you
but
think about
just
like if
slightly,
again,
right? But it's just that just
yeah. So
slightly. It's not like a major thing, but it's just a so there's still
yeah, it's that
challenge,
it's
right?
enough, but it's enough to tip it in the favor of good. So you only have to look at Hollywood, like James Bond, for instance, is the classic of this. He like loses to the baddies along the way, but in the end always wins. There's the 51-49. The baddies win for 49, but he wins for 51. 51 for the win. And just to throw a little bit of thinking juice out there, what's the area called out at Nevada?
The area, like the Area 51, or are you talking about like the desert that's out?
51. See,
Yeah.
51-49 split. So do you think they're good aliens or bad aliens there? If you believe in aliens or whatever it's there, do you think it's good or bad? If it's 51, I would hazard that it's a positive thing.
Probably.
So, but again, you can look at that how you will. That's actually my take. But again, the unit, there's no such thing as a coincidence. So if something matches something else, there's something in that needs looking. So, but yeah, we're in a universe duality of, yeah, 51-49. So basically when the world gets to a point where it's going to go into oblivion, there's a quirk of fate that switches it towards the good. You only have to look at the Second World War for that. Like when Hitler had got like all of Europe or England, and he was absolutely battering England, and he was wiping out he was wiping out the RAF, which then would have enabled him to then take England, which would have put them to a point where it would have been hard to force him back out of Europe. There was one of the Luftwaffe pilots got lost, thought he was over ammunitions warehouse, dropped his bombs, and it just happened to be over a city. And then he thought, so the British thought the Germans were starting to bomb the population as a tactic, so they responded in kind. And so what happened was Hitler then stopped attacking the RAF and started retaliating and bombing the cities, which then gave the RAF time to recoup all their fighters, which then obliterated the Luftwaffe, which then gives air superiority, which then enabled us to retake Europe. There's your quirk of fate. And it happens every time. And I guarantee if people really sat and looked at their life, it would have happened 2 or 3 times in their life if they're 30 and above, where the life's about to really hit the shit and then something quirk happens. Like they're broke and find a lottery ticket on the floor and win $10,000.
Could you go into as we kind of get to the end of this, I would love for you to have you had one of those kind of moments, and could you share one of those kind of like work moments from your life and how that kind of affected and changed your life?
Yeah, well, the near-death experience was a good one. And I was road. I'd been on a first date actually, which was interesting. And this is where the end shows how the universe puts you in front of something to show you who you are. So was driving down the road and I knew this road really well. It was in my local area. I'd driven it literally 1,000 times because it was on the way to the beach. So, I knew the road. It was a long straight road and I knew there was a sharp bend at the end of it that you could take at speed. And I just happened to be, and it was about 11:45 at night. And I was in my car and I was just paying attention. The roads were quiet. And I wanted to pay attention because I was trying to see if my fog lights were working and see if a bit of the road would light up every time I pressed the button. And then I just happened to look up and I was right on top of this bend. And I'm like, "Yeah." So I did that. I made the bend and the car was, I was still full control of the car. But at that particular moment, there just happened to be someone coming the other way and they were going to work. There was actually a member of the RAF that worked at the local RAF base. So that's why they were late to work at nearly midnight. So again, I didn't want to be involved in a head-on crash. I did that. Car was in the field, and the car hit the field at an angle, and it started rolling immediately. And as soon as I saw the dirt there, and I was 110 miles an hour, so I wasn't going slow. I was going, and as soon as I saw the dirt there, I just relaxed. Ironically, I just went, yeah, I'm dead. There's nothing I can do about this. Even danger didn't kick in. Like it was just like I'm dead. So it was sort of kicked in. It was surrender. I'm like, but then weirdly enough, all I could see was a big sphere of white energy surrounding me. And when the car stopped in midair, because I went into a cornfield, so there was flat and cornfield, there was some stood up, and then there was more flat and cornfield. So yeah, I was rolling sideways. It was it it was yeah. It wrote the car off quite a lot. But the thing is, when it stopped rolling, it ended up the right way up. I got out the car and I was like, I did the cartoon thing. I went like this, and I'm like, am I fucking dead or what? Am I a ghost now? Wanted to feel if I was physical matter still. And all I ended up with was a scratch on my hand, a scratch on my elbow, and that was it. And the scratch on my hand I got from getting out the car. I didn't even have whiplash. Now, bearing in mind, this is like mid 90s, so it's not like there was no airbags,
It
no
was
side airbags. No.
like a potentially easily life ending like at that speeds and how many times it sounded like you kind of rolled over it. That's that wow. Thank you for sharing
But
that story. That was a
everything inside of that sphere was undamaged, including the car. So even the wing mirror that had got rolled on a few times was undamaged because it was inside that energetic sphere. So the guy that I nearly hit had stopped. He saw me walking out the field, literally looking like a ghost, and he probably thought he was seeing a ghost. And he was about to call an ambulance. Went, no, 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 don't. Absolutely fine. All I need is take him back to. I'd literally drop this girl off back to her home 20 minutes prior to that, if that. And so I said, all I need to do is take him to there, so I can ring the insurance. And that's how clear I was thinking because I was unharmed. So I'm like, what do you do next? Well, I get my car sorted. And so he took me back to this house and where I dropped her off. And I didn't know her that well. And it was a first date. So anyway, I knocked on the door and she answered. And I says, oh, look, I've written my car off. I've crashed it. And first, she didn't believe me at first because I was known to be a bit of a practical joker. And then she saw my face. She went, yeah, you're not lying, are you? I went, no, I was white as a sheet. So she says, yeah, come in. She says, because I just need to ring insurance. And then a mum came down because, it's midnight, just after midnight. She's wondering what the bloody noise is and what's happening. And she sits down. She goes, why is there a bull over your head? Turns out this girl's mum was a bloody psychic medium. So, like the universe going, this is who you are. And we're also going to show you that you are protected. So this whole experience, and here's the result, I could have ended the date 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later. But the fact that the date ended organically at the exact time for me to nearly hit that guy to go into that field to write my car off, to get surrounded and go back and get in front of the psychic medium, it's just like, and people think that's not coincidence. It's just so orchestrated.
it's always funny. We start to put together all kind of the dots and you realize of like what brought us here today, all the little things that you don't think that happen in your life that bring you to the moment of where if you're watching this podcast or with Roy and I having this conversation, like there's so many different factors. And there was a conversation in one of my groups and they were talking about like, oh, if I could change, like if I couldn't get rid of my ADHD, like would you? And I was like, I wouldn't, because if I change that one aspect of who I am, the whole aspect of who I am changes. Like if I change
Yeah.
one thing in my life, like this is why I've tried to live with no regrets now. Like I've tried to let go of anything because if I change that one thing of like deciding to do karate instead of basketball, right? When I was 6, could have been a whole alternate reality, an alternate
Yeah.
version that's probably out there somewhere.
Yeah. Multiple realities.
Yeah. And it's all based on each of those little individual choices and decisions that bring you to where you're at. And I think it's really important I'd love to kind of finish on this note, and then we'll go into a little bit on your business and how people can reach out to you. But I would love to know, I actually lost my question. Like, I'm glad I have notes.
Yeah, look, I mean, blending our logical mind and our intuition is how we be at our most powerful.
Yeah, to talk a little bit about like maybe one or two practical steps of how we can like blend our like intuition and our practical logic to kind of help for our day-to-day lives. Because one of the things I like to try to do is take these spiritual things, as much as they're big outward concepts, is that we're here to live a life. So how can we take some of these things we've talked about and just do a little application for day-to-day life? So for the little mundane things that happen on the Tuesday or Wednesday morning, like how can we apply these things to those kind of scenarios?
Yeah, well, depends. Look, intuition has levels. Imagine it like a Dungeons and Dragons game. You start at level one, you do the work, and you get better at it, and you level up. So level one intuition is more often referred to as gut instinct. The consistency it has with level one to between level one and level 100 is never wrong because intuition just knows. The only time it's wrong is when we misinterpret what it's saying to us, just like I did on the holiday. Yeah, I'm probably going to get this amazing opportunity, and not really. And as long as you take accountability and go, okay, I got it wrong, but as humans, that's how we learn. We learn, and as long as you don't make the same mistake twice, you're always going to grow and you're always going to learn. So learn from your mistakes and take accountability. That don't blame anybody else or anything else. That's one of the first things I tend to tell my clients. Take accountability. It's your life, it's your choices. You know, even if, not being harsh here, even if someone pinned you to the floor and poured 3 gallons of alcohol down your throat and then you got done for drunk, they got you in the car, and when the police pulled them over, they threw you in the driver's seat, you still made the choice to go to the bar that night. At some point, you had the accountable that could prevent that from happening. So, and that's always there. So, accountability. When you start taking accountability, what that does is put you in a massive position of power because then you have the power to change. So, until you're accountable, you can't change.
Like the other
So,
phrase, like
so
victims never get well, victims stay victims, right? Like if you have the victim
yeah,
mentality, you will always be a victim because the
yeah,
problem is always on the
yeah.
outside and not because you're never looking inward, you're always looking outward, you're always putting your shit on someone else.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. Thanks for saying that because it's reminding me what I tend to tell people. It's like we was talking earlier about that. You've only ever got two choices in life. In any given situation, you've got two choices. Those two choices are you either play victim for the moment, or you play student for the moment. If you always choose to be the student, you'll learn about your life. You'll learn about how you operate in your life. You'll get to know what your life path and life missions are. And that takes time. So learn patience and be kind to yourself when you get it wrong. Because when you start a new journey, whether you're 50 or 20, it's a new journey. So you're level one. Yeah, there are exceptions. Like I started life at probably level 100 when it came to intuition, but I still chose that before I came down here. So it just meant that once I truly understood that, I then had to hold myself to a completely different set of rule levels. The demon boss fights I were having were much tougher, so I just had to accept that. There was my accountability. I wasn't going to get the level one lessons. So when I was leveling up, I had to stay at my home country for 3 months. And rather than blame the Australian government for making up arbitrary rules, which are bullshit, I took accountability and went, well, I got the heads up for it. I didn't do my due diligence, but I wasn't hard on myself either. Yeah, fucked up.
I,
So be it.
it goes into because I was reading about kind of your process and you're talking about in your on your web about your coaching thing. Very similar to my kind of what you talked about there. Very similar to something I came up with, and I think this is pretty similar. So I have my man method is maturity, assertiveness, nurturing, right? You have to have maturity, take
Mm.
ownership and responsibility, assertiveness to assert what you want and how to go get it. And then, but also the nurturing quality of learning how to love, care, and like appreciate yourself. So I think that's just, it's crazy because it's like, wow, that's really aligned.
Here's the thing, right? Like, if you've got someone who you come across who you've got a sense that they're level one and they've made a mistake, treat them like the level one. Guide them and help them to make sense of the mistake they've just made. Don't belittle them because you're level 50, because that's just ego.
Yeah,
If
and
I was
it's,
like, if I had that, I'd never teach anybody. I've
yeah,
taken it
and
upon myself. I've learned all this stuff that is valuable information because, especially in this modern age, more and more men are waking up and their intuition is activating, which is also activating the mother wound because it sits on our feminine side. So we're having to deal with all these issues that we have with women that were taught to us growing up. So and of how you are with the opposite sex, just look at how your parents were with each other. And there's your baseline for what you learned. And then you go, right, okay, so that's what they taught me how to be. If that's not healthy, then your accountability is, well, then I can change that. Because prior to the 60s, they thought neuroplasticity wasn't a thing, that you couldn't change how you thought. And then it to be proved that you could change your neural pathways. In other words, you could change your way of thinking, which meant you change your habits, you change who you are from because your brain pattern gets hardwired between the ages of 0 and 7. Then after that, you're just repeating what you've learned for the rest of your life, and unless you take actions to change that.
the
So
power of unlearning and relearning things, particularly of
yeah,
habits and behaviors, of where it's recognizing because it becomes so integral and so subconscious because they become ingrained. One of the things that I always kind of struggle with clients is especially getting back to the core kind of emotional resonance of that first traumatic thing there that happened as a kid, whatever, however small or big it is, it's the perception of them that kind of is now guided and dictated their actions for the rest of their life until they were like, oh shit, like I can choose to change this, right? And it's knowing that
yeah,
choice of
yeah,
uh
yeah. Because one of my methods with clients is called chopping the trees. So when like I first get with them, they say, "Well, I'm acting this way because my dad was that way," and then as soon as they then start to tell the story, I go, "Right, I'm going to stop you there." Because if I allow the person to tell the story, they're still energizing that neural pathway and it's already strong. So I chop it to the quick and go, we don't need to hear the story because we're energizing something that we need to stop energizing. So your stories don't matter. Not that I'm not saying that in an uncompassionate way. It's an actual therapeutic way because I'm stopping them continually energizing and getting them used to feeling that weird feeling we get when we can't tell the story. And what that actually is that the weird feeling is it's us not sending that energy down that neural pathway like we've been doing every day, 50 times a day for the last 20 years. And it will feel utterly alien because we've never done it.
it's a
So
new
people,
it's a new it's a new thing. And it's so
yeah,
it's
it's a
just
new
yeah.
experience. So like you've got to push through that new experience until how you want to change becomes the normal. And that takes a minimum of 3 months through my observation with working with people. And I'm bloody good at this. I'm very good because, again, I've learned to even draw a graph of how habits get broken. So I give people visual things that's easy to understand. And when the logical mind understands a concept, it gets out the way. And then intuition goes, right, gotcha. The challenge is getting the logical mind out the way. And you do that by going, you are safe. But how you tell people they are safe is never, you're safe. This is a graph of how habits get broken, and it's this bit's this bit. Human mind goes, oh yeah, I understand that now. Cool. I don't need to worry about it. It's not dangerous. So it gets out of the way, and then it's very easy to break a habit, or it's very easy to change when. So the challenge is getting the person to understand something that in their deep they feel is dangerous because their ego is going, this is dangerous. Because if you understand this, I'm going to die. The product of change is part of your ego dies. Although it doesn't, you just take the power away that you've been given it and give it back to intuition.
Yeah, and it's
That
it's
it'd be an ego concept.
exactly. No, I love that. There was something that I lost lost it. The on the there of nope, I had the thought and then it keeps spinning on my head. So we're gonna move on then.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And the way I see that is you obviously weren't meant to cover it because if you
yeah,
were,
well,
it would stay.
it would stay, right? And this is where I've learned to just kind of let things go, right? And I think
Disconnect.
it,
Yeah,
and
surrender.
it's learning how to kind of disconnect and just kind of acceptance, right? And I think too
Yeah,
is the light of awareness. When we start to shine the light of awareness, because one of the skill sets I try to really bring out is the we have the mind, body, soul, but it like within the mind, we all think I am, but it's like we're the observers, so we're the awareness, and we start to shine
yeah,
awareness and that's part of our intuition, awareness on our thoughts, on our things, and start questioning it. We can change it. And we can actually, and like you
yeah,
said, right? The mind needs to, like, if it's unknown, we will create as many, like, we'll the most disastrous situations possible in our head that aren't real and believe they are real
no, yeah, yeah,
versus looking at the
yeah,
evidence of what's actually presented in front of you. And then when you're like, okay, when I break it down, all right, this is understanding habits. One of the things that
yeah,
I found about habits, particularly for ADHD people, like to for us to have it like still about that 3 months process, but us to reform a new habit takes us about 6 months. We have to go a little bit longer because of that inconsistency in the 'cause it requires more perseverance than necessarily
yeah.
consistency to stay up. But as we
Yeah,
get
there's a
kind of
few more challenges from person to person
yeah.
because your physiology and the way you think is hyper focused. You're having to deal with a very, very powerful energy to offset.
And it's one of those things with this particular energy too. It's an on or off. So it can go
Yeah.
full on, and then there will be days of where I can't get myself out of the bed. Like it becomes a real challenge to do basic things because the energy levels aren't
Okay.
there. And
So let me apply.
yeah,
So sorry to interrupt. Let me apply Occam's razor to that. Occam's razor, the most simplistic, basic is the most obvious answer is usually the right one. So if that particular day you can't get out of bed, why? Think of the
typically
most simple answer.
simplest answers usually it comes down to like that emotional like kind of
So
dread.
you're already going too difficult. I'll help you here. The most obvious answer is you're meant to stay in bed that day.
I like that. Yeah, because you're at your body's saying it needs rest, so take deep rest.
Yep. Yep. That's the most obvious answer. And here's the thing. So if you see it that simple, and life actually is and I've been working with Occam's razor as a life habit for a decade now, and I don't really get stressed because of that, because I don't force myself to do things that my energy is telling me not to do. Because I go, right, I'm feeling like this, I'm feeling tired, I don't feel like doing that. And it's not laziness, because I'm already very well versed to tune in if it is the energy of being lazy, which then I will push through. But I'm just talking about what the obvious stuff is here. So, if I tune into the energy going, "Right, why am I feeling this way? And if I don't get any answers beside that, I've got to trust what I'm feeling. Okay, I'm feeling exhausted. So what do I do when I'm exhausted? I go and take a nap.
I
And then I
like that.
haven't forced myself to do something that I'm not meant to do in that moment because it's only the moment of the now that exists. So moving beyond that, so let's say, you have that day where you just can't get out of bed and you go, you know what? Obviously, I'm not meant to get out of bed today. And then that happens around 9 a.m. Then at 10 a.m., you're meant to do something, the energy will change. And the driving energy will say, right, you'll get to go and do the thing now. And you're just only meant to rest for an hour. But you didn't know that. The universe and spirit don't always tell us. They just tell us step one. All we need to do is rest for an extra hour. But if they said rest for an extra hour, you would be antsy for an hour, wouldn't you? So if they say rest with no time frame, you go, our logic will probably go, well, if I'm meant to rest with no time frame, that's probably the whole day. So I'm like, great, I'll chill out then. And then all of a sudden the energy shifts an hour later. Oh, okay, I can go and do that. And you've had a really good rest for an hour. So you can see how it works. That's intuition and logic working in tandem. Because logic goes, this doesn't make sense. If you're trying to get out of bed and you're not meant to, that's not making sense because your energy of the now is dictating that you're meant to stay in bed.
I like that. And thank you for that is a way of applying these kind of principles to kind of everyday life. I really love that, Roy.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you for this conversation. I really learned a lot. I really kind of got I got a lot out of this and I found a lot of connection and a lot of just being able to really understand like I feel like once again, like I keep saying, a lot of similarities in story and kind of how we approach
Mm.
things. I would love to our listeners to know how could they work with you? What are some of your kind of social media? I'll definitely put all that in the description and stuff, but a little bit more about your business and how you help.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got a big mission to help men activate their intuition. Yeah, I do still work with women as well, but my mission these days is mainly men. Because to be honest, we need the bloody help. We're not naturally at it than as the women are. Um, so, I'm a mentor and a guide. So I do like one-on-one sessions and then also mentoring that's 8 weeks, 6 months, a year, depending on what suits you best. I'm very flexible in that whatever the person needs, I do my best to create a win-win situation yeah, I'm always open to public speaking and podcasts and to share message as well and get that knowledge out there that I've learned over being connected to my intuition for most of my life now, and I'm 52 these days, and helping people in general be more healthy, mind, body, spirit. There's that, and I have a YouTube channel, so please like and subscribe and follow that because that's in its infancy and I'm trying to grow that. There's normally at least a video a week that goes up on there and just about my spiritual journey of what's going on energetically at the time. So yesterday was International Men's Day, which is still not spoken about enough. If we need it to be at the equivalent of International Women's Day, essentially, we want equality as well. And so there's stuff around that, and you can feel that my social tag name is Roy B, Man of Merlin. That's the letter B, not the insect B. So Roy B, Man of Merlin. So you'll find that on. There's a Facebook group called that. There's Instagram, the name of the YouTube channel because you can channels these days. So it's not a random amount of letters and numbers that you have to copy and share. You can't remember
Yeah,
that.
I'll have all that in the description below, and make
Yeah.
sure that I'll make sure to definitely like and follow all your stuff as well. And I also just want to say thank you again for especially working with men, because I do find that within this space that we do need more men like ourselves to kind of combat some of the mainstream and the kind of negative talking points that come from different parts of the manosphere kind of self-help stuff that can be really toxic and really negative but to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
men
yeah.
like ourselves to be able to bring out, I think, a positive aspect and really kind of touch into these deep spiritual things that will help us grow. I want to just say thank you for taking the time out of your day to chat with me, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for the invite. I appreciate. I always have people that I did have my own podcast for a while, and then things just change and evolve, as I mentioned. So the fact that you've got a platform for people to share their message is just amazing, and especially with your journey and what you're trying to share out there as well. To give people who have these challenges insights, whether they're male or female, is just amazing because there's always those crossed information that's useful for everybody. And yeah, and just especially this is more for men that ignore social media. You matter, and always someone that you can talk to. Always, whatever you're going through, find a random stranger if you have to, because you never know who you might meet as a random stranger, just a friend you haven't met yet, and do your best to reach out when you're struggling. There's you've got friends. There's free phone call places around the world. Australia's Black Dog and the Samaritans and all those places that you can just call to if you need the help. But also remember that you're amazing too. All the things that you've achieved so far in your life, whether you've been a really good friend to somebody or you've got a good purposeful career that helps a lot of people, just know that if you do a little bit of research on yourself, as you said at the start, when people introduce you, how people see you is normally better than you see yourself, as long as you
Absolutely true.
ignore social.
Yeah, no, especially when you take those opinions from the people that are closest to you. I keep that
Yeah,
group of really small, but it's ones that I can trust and value. You keep that of like the opinions that matter should keep into a very, very small circle. Many of the opinions you run across to don't actually matter or affect your life.
yeah.
But
And there's one thing, always make sure you've got a very honest friend in your life because they'll keep you on track. Because when you're wandering off track and doing shit you shouldn't be doing, your honest friend will go, "Hey, mate, I noticed you're doing this." And they won't care if it upsets you. but also play that game too. And if they do upset you, don't get angry about it. Just go, yeah, you know what? Accountability. You know what? You're right.
Because a good friend tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
Yeah. 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 You don't need sick. If you surround yourself with sycophants, you don't grow.
Exactly. Well, once again, Roy, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching. I'll have all of Roy's information, so definitely give him a like and a follow. And once again, Roy, thank you so much. And everyone, you guys have a great, if not better day.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks very much for